The moment they smelled this fragrance, they instantly felt their bodies relax. It was as if every single cell in their bodies was cheering and increasing their vitality. It really is the spring of life. Feng Yuro was so excited that her voice was trembling, and her pretty face was flushed red. He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang gratefully. Chu Yang, thank you very much. The Yu clan is finally going to have an heir. Chu Yang coughed a few times and felt that his face was a little red, but it was because of embarrassment. Although a certain king of hell's skin was thick, he still blushed at this moment. It seems like this Yu family's offspring is a matter between you two. You two can discuss it yourselves. I really couldn't handle it if he said it to me so directly. This thing had nothing to do with me, right? If it did have anything to do with me, then it would be better if it didn't. What kind of person have I become? I only provided a bit of spring water, nothing else. Yes. Yu Lingxue also held Chu Yang's hand excitedly and shook it forcefully. He was actually a little incoherent, and his handsome face was also flushed red. The Yu clan finally has an heir. Chu Yang, thank you very much for your help this time. Your great help. Our Yu clan's ancestors will also thank you. Chu Yang was speechless. What's wrong with these two people? They were usually quite serious. But why were they speaking so incoherently now? What are you talking about over there? Feng Yuro finally realized her husband's faulty wording. She pinched Yu Lingshue's waist fiercely. Her face flushed red, and she was extremely embarrassed. You fool! You're still so foolish after more than 10,000 years. Yu Lingxue laughed foolishly, and then his face twisted in pain. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Yes, it wasn't Chu Yang who helped. Chu Yang didn't help at all. It was me. It was myself. Obviously, this person was so happy that he became silly. Just now he was just speaking incoherently, but now he was just babbling nonsense. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. On the other side, Feng Yuro couldn't help but feel ashamed. Then she suddenly exploded. With a bang, she knocked her husband down to the ground. Then with a whoosh, she entered the inner room. Chu Yang continued to be dumbfounded. Feng Yuro came out with a red face and an extremely embarrassed look on her face. She carried the 2 bottles of Spring of Life into the room and closed the door with a bang. She didn't come out again. It was still very obvious that this woman was driven mad by Yu Lingxue, this fool. The more she spoke, the more outrageous, the more incoherently, the more embarrassing, the more. Io! Yu Lingxue held his thigh, his face twitching a little. There was also some uncontrollable excitement. He said to Chu Yang, this time, it's really all thanks to you. If it wasn't for you, our Yu clan wouldn't have the incense lamps. Chu Yang was dumbfounded, and his mouth was agape and his tongue was tied. Suddenly, he felt that whatever he said was inappropriate. What kind of person was this? What kind of words were these? Why did they sound so ambiguous? It was already very ambiguous before, but now it seemed to be even more. In the end, he had no choice but to say very pathetically, that's what I should do. It's nothing. Since that's the case, then, are you guys busy? I'll go out first. I won't disturb you guys. After saying that, he felt that there was something wrong with his words. He was about to step back with his head full of sweat. Yu Lingxue still didn't realize what was going on. He said excitedly, Okay, we'll be busy for a while. I'll go and busy for a while. No. Why don't you sit for a while more? Chu Yang stepped back with his face full of sweat. If he continued to sit, would he want to die? Even if he didn't want his own life, he had to take someone's life. It was more important to leave quickly. Just as he stepped out, he heard a soft moan from inside. Then the door closed with a bang, almost squeezing Chu Yang's straight nose inside. A certain king of hell stepped back quickly, but he still felt the wind from the door blowing against his face. Even his hair fluttered backward. He thought to himself that it was a close call. Then, he heard the sound of punching and kicking inside, as well as embarrassed and angry scolding. You idiot! How am I going to face people in the future? You. What's wrong with me? I'm just happy. You. You're really going to piss me off, but you can't. Hurry up and block the sound. Yes. I'm so pissed off I forgot everything. Then, Chu Yang couldn't hear anything else. Two extraordinarily powerful supreme martial artists' divine senses completely sealed the room. Even the current Dharma Supreme might not be able to pry into the space sealed by the two of them, let alone a certain king of hell. Bah! A certain king of hell was at most a little thick-skinned, but he didn't have the hobby of eavesdropping on the private matters of a married couple. Chu Yang rubbed his head and walked out with lingering fear. There were already a few heads poking out from several rooms. What's going on? Why did such powerful supreme martial artists' divine senses suddenly appear? Could it be those two experts sparring? What's going on? Boss, why are you here? What happened? Yeah, what's wrong? Chu Yang hurriedly explained with a head full of sweat. Well, the Moon Breeze couple is very busy. Please don't disturb them. With that he left. Halfway through, he couldn't help but pat himself. You just said not to disturb them. Why did you say they were very busy? Busy? Busy with what? GMO scratched his head, a look of suspicion on his face. He could only pin his hopes on this. Owing a favor had to be repaid. But if he didn't think of a way to improve the strength of ZJ and his brothers now, the risk during the final battle would greatly increase. If he couldn't take care of everything now, how could he think about the future? If ZJ's guess was right, the things here were probably still unusable by ZJ now. But now, he had no choice but to use them. Even if he couldn't use them, he had to take a risk. The Dharma Supreme's strength had increased greatly now, and the Enforcer's strength would definitely have increased considerably after demonization. Under such circumstances, ZJ's side would definitely lose. This was the final battle that concerned the future of all living beings in the Zhongtian. Defeat was equivalent to death. Therefore, Chu Yang had to do his best before the battle to raise his chances of winning to the maximum. He had to do his best, win or lose, and have no regrets in life or death. If he only had those 17 heavy pills, even if it wasn't a drop in the bucket to Chu Yang now, it was still too little. The ZJ brothers, Mo Qinggu and Mo Lei, would have to take 11 of them. Wu Jiuqing and Chu Lu would also have to take 2 of them. If Tan Tan didn't give them, alright, just one sentence from Tian Tian was enough to make ZJ break down. Senior brother, am I handsome? Am I even more handsome today than yesterday? Tian Tian didn't need to say more than that. If he said that to ZJ's ears 180 times, Tan Tan would still be able to enjoy himself. On the other hand, ZJ would definitely be driven crazy. Also, should he give some to Feng and Yu? And ZJ's family? Parents? Grandfather? He would have to use at least 3 more, right? He should at least leave 1 for Wu Qianqian, right? Tai Butian should also have 1, right? And ZJ's son, that little rascal, should at least have 1, right? 17 pills might seem like a lot, but once they were distributed, it was really not enough. Who should he give them to? Chu Yang thought to himself. If 17 pills were to be reversed, it would be 70 pills. Perhaps it would be barely enough to distribute. 17 pills was really not enough. Actually, even if there were 70 pills, and it was enough to distribute, what was the actual effect? Collectively increasing one's cultivation by 100 years, 17 pills would be 1,700 years. 70 pills would only be 7,000 years. Compared to the Dharma Supreme, it was just a fraction of his cultivation. It was really not optimistic. If only there were 700 pills, then it would definitely be enough. Minister Chu was mumbling that it was not enough. At the side, the sword spirit, who was packing up the herbs and preparing to refine pills, rolled his eyes. His originally somewhat illusory figure almost disappeared in a trance. It was clear how shocked he was. I say, big brother, my dear big brother, your imagination is too wild. Even in the heavenly imperial court, this kind of divine medicine is hard to find. Even if only 1 pill appears, it can trigger a bloody battle between many forces in the heavenly imperial court. You have 17 pills all of a sudden, and you think it's not enough? And you want 70 pills? 700 pills? What are you thinking? You can't be so greedy, right? Enough is enough. Chu Yang smiled embarrassedly. Look at you, I'm just thinking. The more good things, the better. The deep-rooted bad habits of humans are always like this. You have to think twice. Even the heavenly elixir of the heavenly imperial court is not as effective as the heavy elixir in terms of recovery ability. The sword spirit complained, "You have such unparalleled resources in the world, and you're still complaining. Isn't this too much? What about elixirs that can improve cultivation?" Chuyang asked. "The most important thing in elixirs is to be safe. If the elixir is not safe, no matter how great its medicinal efficacy is, you won't be able to absorb it. The result will be in vain. However, the heavy elixir does not have this drawback. In terms of safety, there is no elixir that can surpass the heavy elixir in the world. It's just that when it comes to improving cultivation, it depends on the basic quality of the elixir. This is really hard to say," the sword spirit said. "When you reach the heavenly imperial court and open the inheritance of the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, there will be many ways to improve cultivation." The heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud was recognized as the #1 alchemist in the heavenly imperial court. His elixir recipes are also the most miraculous in the heavenly imperial court. In fact, this is also one of the biggest reasons why the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, Zihao, rose so quickly in the heavenly imperial court. Of course, this is also the source of the jealousy and hatred of the other forces in the heavenly imperial court. This is also one of the main reasons why the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud fought alone. The heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud rose so quickly in the heavenly imperial court as a wanderer in the pugilistic world. His speed is amazing. After tens of thousands of years, he became the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud. Who doesn't fear him? Based on the situation at that time, if the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud could continue to develop, I believe that it would not take long for the entire heavenly imperial court to be under his control. Not helping him back then is probably a kind of tacit agreement between the various forces. If the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud defeated the extraterrestrial demon, he would become the savior and eternal master of the heavenly imperial court. So, the sword spirit's voice was a little strange, as if he was pointing at Shmi. Chapter 1669. Yes. Even now, you have to keep it a secret. Even your brothers, don't let them know about it. After all, it's not a good thing to know too much about some things. Instead, it may harm them, the sword spirit warned solemnly. I understand. Isn't there a saying that ignorance is bliss? The complexity of the celestial imperial court, the greedy changes in people's hearts, and the various devious means are something that you people who have never been there can never imagine. The brighter the light behind it, the more boundless the haze. Sometimes, a single medicinal herb can cause countless deaths and injuries. A single spirit pill can cause too many battles. Even a careless glance can bring about a fatal disaster. A careless sentence can make you become the target of public criticism. Is this celestial imperial court actually so complicated? Chuyang asked curiously. Isn't there an unusually strict discipline or law there? Don't the celestial emperors restrict their subordinates? Of course there are restrictions, but you can only know the details when you get there. Now, no matter what I say, I can't explain it clearly. The sword spirit sighed. Any high-level plane is an even more complicated place. This principle is the same no matter where it is. To give a simple example, take the lower three heavens for example. The upper echelons compete for power and wealth. In the lower three heavens, they compete for territory. In the upper three heavens, they compete for resources. In the lower three heavens, as long as you have money and power, you can do things. In the upper three heavens, if you have power and influence, you are the boss. In the upper three heavens, it becomes power, influence, wealth, and resources. You also have to have connections. Otherwise, you can't even keep it. In the celestial imperial court, if your own power can't reach a certain level, you can only choose to develop in a low-key way. Power, influence, wealth, resources, everything. Then there's the matter inside. It's very troublesome. The sword spirit finished the last sentence with a sigh. The materials needed for refining elixirs had already been collected. After informing Chuyang, he went to refine the heavy elixirs. Chuyang sat in the tribulation space. His eyes flickered as he murmured, Power, influence, wealth, resources. In the afternoon, Chuyang looked at Mo Tianji, who had gathered in his room. Gu Duxing, Ao Xian, Xie Donxiong GMO, Luo Kadi Dong Wushang and Mo Layer, Rui Butong, and Mo Qing Wu, and the others made a total of 10 people. Boss, why did you call us here? GMO smiled. Is there something good to eat? Is there anything fun to do? Luo Kadi asked. Is there anything you want to discuss? This was Mo Tianji. Are you going to kill someone? This was Gu Duxing. Don't tell me you want me to play dead again. That's too difficult for me, Rui Butong said. Chu Yang had a headache. He decided to cut the Gordian knot. Stop right there. This time, I called you because there's something important. As he spoke, he took out 10 new heavy pills and placed them on his palm. It rotated with a rumbling sound. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils. He felt relaxed and happy. Luo Kadi's, Jimo's, and Rui Butong's nostrils twitched rapidly. The sniffing sounds almost turned the narrow space into a vacuum. It smelled really good. Actually, it wasn't that others didn't want to do so. It was just that it was really too degrading. They couldn't bring themselves to do so. Being shameless was invincible. It was the same for taking advantage of others. As for GMO and the other two, they had long forgotten what shame was. Why would they care about this? What is this? Gu Duxing asked. Isn't it a heavy pill? Why does it feel a little different from before? This is a heavy pill, but it's a super heavy pill. Taking one can increase the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years. Chu Yang deliberately emphasized. Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. 100 years? Supreme martial artist cultivation. Increasing cultivation by 100 years, and increasing the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years, were two completely different things. A supreme martial artist wouldn't even bother to take a look at an ordinary martial artist's 100 years of cultivation. But this one pill could increase the cultivation of a supreme martial artist by 100 years out of thin air. What kind of concept was this? It was a little too shocking. Everyone takes one pill now. Take it immediately. Quickly absorb the medicinal effects as much as possible, and do your best to improve your own cultivation and comprehension. In the face of a great enemy, every bit of improvement counts. Every bit of improvement means a greater chance of victory. At least you'll have a greater chance of survival, Chu Yang urged. The heavy pills in Chu Yang's hands slowly floated up and landed in everyone's palms. Mo Qinggu took the heavy pills and asked suspiciously, Why are there only 10? What about yours? I've already taken mine. Silly girl, can't you see that my aura is different now? Chu Yang smiled warmly. Only Mo Qinggu was still thinking about Chu Yang wholeheartedly at this moment. If Chu Yang didn't have any, Mo Qinggu would definitely give her own to Chu Yang. It didn't matter if she took it or not, as long as Chu Yang improved. Mo Qingwu's words made the other brothers blush. Because everyone was excited just now and didn't think of this. Everyone don't be shy. Men are always a little careless. Mo Tianji smoothed things over. Not to mention, my sister is Chu Yang's wife. How can you compare? Just like Mo Layer's sister-in-law. She also ate it after seeing Dong Wushang eat it first. You're not women. How can you understand the deep feelings in this? Everyone burst into laughter. Mo Qinggu and Mo Lei both blushed. But while Mo Qinggu was shy, she was also a little happy. Originally, second brother was upset because of her, and wanted to quarrel with Chu Yang when he saw him. But now he had accepted it. Just now, he even said that she was Chu Yang's wife. This meant, what wife? That's so unpleasant to hear. Why don't you say that I'm your partner? How nice would that sound? The little girl pouted in her heart and rolled her eyes. But she didn't know that Mo Tianji was already making plans for his sister. What kind of woman could be called a wife by a man's side? That was the position of the legal wife. Only the legal wife could be called a wife. As for the others, they didn't count. At least, they couldn't use the exclusive title of wife. Partner, confidant, and other titles couldn't be compared to the seemingly vulgar title of wife. Mo Tianji seemed to be joking and helping his brothers out of their predicament. But in fact, he had already confirmed Mo Qingwu's position as the big wife. Of course, Mo Tianji wouldn't be at ease. In the future, he would still think of ways to help his sister. Yes, his sister was too honest. In the hands of Chu Yang, this playboy. If he didn't make plans for her, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Cough, a brother-in-law is really tiring. A brother-in-law who loves his sister is even more tiring. Especially when he loves his sister, and has to be the brother-in-law of someone like Chu Yang. That's tiring on top of tiring. If that's the case, should we call her sister-in-law in advance? Wahahaha. GMO winked. Luo Kadi followed suit. Mo Qinggu rolled her eyes and said in a dignified manner, "Second brother G. Don't tell me I don't dare to agree to you calling me sister-in-law? Go ahead and call me that. Why don't you call me that? See if I agree or not." Wow. This little girl is really thick-skinned. GMO was stunned for a long time before he said it. He almost choked. He really didn't call her sister-in-law. The others also looked at each other. They didn't expect this shy little girl, everyone's little sister, to be so brave today. Ha ha ha. Everyone laughed. Chu Yang also laughed. Does Senior Wu and Luer have a share? Mo Tianji laughed heartily. It seemed as if he had casually asked this question. Most men were careless, but Mo Tianji was definitely not one of them. This sentence was the best proof. Yes, why would I give them a share? I'll send it to them right away. However, Chu Yang didn't suspect anything and answered casually. After he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally looked at Mo Tianji, with a gaze that was guarding against perverts, just like the way Mo Tianji looked at Chu Yang back then. However, Mo Tianji had already turned his head back. It seemed as if he had just casually asked that question. He chatted with his brothers for a while with a normal expression, and swallowed the heavy pill in his hand. He was the last one to take the pill, even later than Mo Qinggu. He watched as everyone swallowed the heavy pill, and sat cross-legged on the ground to practice, digesting the newly obtained huge medicinal effects without any distractions. Chu Yang completely covered his room with the supreme martial artist's divine sense cage. Then he walked out quietly. He walked to Chu Luer's door. Before he knocked, Chu Luer had already opened the door. Big brother. After dealing with the corpses these few days, Chu Luer already looked a lot calmer, as if she had gone through a lot. Facing the cycle of life and death one after another made this little girl mature exceptionally quickly. This level of maturity made Chu Yang's heart ache sometimes. Is Elder Wu here? Please come over for a while. I have something to tell you. Chu Yang said telepathically. Wu Jueqing walked over very quickly. What's the important matter? I'm just about to go out. You're going out? Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. What was he going out for when he wasn't regulating his breathing and waiting for the big battle to come? I'm going to look for the Dharma Supreme and give it one last try. Wu Jueqing's face was solemn as he said, We definitely won't be able to find him if we look for him openly. But if I go alone, he might show up. If he can stop at this point, there's still a way to salvage the situation. At least we won't continue to suffer. Chapter 1670. Chu Yang said earnestly. Besides, the great clans have already been massacred. The Dharma Supreme can't stop even if he wants to. It's too late to rein in the horse near the cliff, too late to mend the leak. Wu Jueqing sighed. How can I not know the risks of this trip? But if this goes on, it will really be too out of control. The entire continent is on the brink of destruction. What does my personal safety matter? This life of mine was saved in the first place. It's my duty to protect the world. Even if there's only a glimmer of hope, it's still worth fighting for. Chu Yang said, I understand what Elder means. But if Elder Wu still insists on going, it's better for you to take this elixir before going. Elixir? What elixir? What elixir is there to take at this point? Asked Wu Jueqing. Heavy elixir. Chu Yang said seriously. I know that heavy elixirs are not unfamiliar to Elder. But what I'm giving you this time is different from what Elder Wu has taken before. The previous heavy elixirs were more focused on recovery. Now this heavy elixir can increase Elder Wu's current cultivation level by 100 years. There's actually such a miraculous elixir? Wu Jueqing's eyes lit up. Since that's the case, why would an old man like me need to take such a miraculous elixir? Why don't I give it all to Lu? She's still weak and can use it to improve herself. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Lu taking one is already her limit. I'm afraid she still needs Elder Wu to help her tidy up her meridians. Although Lure's talent is outstanding, she's after all only at the peak of supreme martial artist level. Not even 7th grade yet. The effect of this elixir is still a little too strong for her. She needs Elder's help. Besides, there's no benefit in taking more of this elixir. If Lure needs it in the future, I'll just refine more for her. I'm still not stingy towards my own sister. Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, "There's one more thing. If I'm not wrong, after this battle, we'll probably have to leave the heavens. When that time comes, Elder Wu will have to go to the heavens to increase his strength. Prepare to meet your brothers. With Elder's current cultivation level, I'm afraid." Before Chu Yang finished, Wu Jueqing was already completely convinced. No need to say any more. I'll take it. The battle is imminent, every bit of improvement I can. After dealing with Wu Jueqing, Chu Yang didn't stay for long. He went on to look for the Moon Breeze couple. Of course, in order to avoid the possibility that the Moon Breeze couple was still busy sparring, or cough, that Chu Yang had already started coughing from afar. Cough, 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 cough. Cough, 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 cough. He coughed with every step. When he reached the door, Yu Lingxue had already opened the door with his handsome face flushed red. He hurriedly complained, "If you're already here, then so be it. Why are you coughing so hard? Are you sick?" Even his coughing sounds weird, and it's filled with a lewd smell. Feng Yuro's face was also flushed red. Obviously, the couple knew what Chu Yang was worried about. In the face of such an awkward situation, Chu Yang could only rub his nose and smile bitterly. "Fine, I had good intentions, but now you're saying that I'm sick." His mouth was filled with a lewd taste, and even his coughs were lewd. "I really don't know where you heard the lewd sound from. Your ears are really different." Chu Yang wanted to retort, but Feng Yuro was right beside him. How could he be so presumptuous? He could only take his pride into consideration and swallow this loss. After exchanging some pleasantries, he went straight to the point and stated the purpose of his visit. However, to Chu Yang's surprise, the Moon Breeze couple frankly refused to take it. Staring at the 2 heavy pills in Chu Yang's hands, which were enough to make all the martial artists in the world go crazy, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro had complicated expressions. "The 2 of us can't take this anymore." "Why?" Chu Yang was very surprised. So many people dream of having good things but can't get. I've already given them to you. And you're actually rejecting me? What's going on? Sword Master Chu, there's something you don't know. In fact, our cultivation has already reached the limit of the heavenly realm. If we really want to, we're very confident of breaking through. If we really take this heavy pill now, and suddenly gain new strength, it's very likely that we'll automatically break through the bottleneck and reach Ning Tianya's level. By then, even if we don't want to break through the void and leave this realm, it'll be impossible. Yu Lingxue smiled gently and said, "But we don't want to leave. We don't want to leave this heavenly realm. This is also the biggest reason why we've never taken that last step." At this point, the couple looked at each other. In their eyes, there was an indescribable longing and unwillingness to part with each other. The 2 of them secretly held each other's hands. Obviously, this was a decision made by both of them. In terms of personal desires, we've received Sword Master Chu's help and generously gave us the spring of life. Our long-cherished wish has come true. Now, we're preparing to have a child and pass on the legacy of the Moon Breeze couple. If possible, maybe. Yu Lingxue's face was a little red, but he still said it openly. Feng Yuro, who was at the side, was also blushing. She listened to Yu Lingxue's words with unusual gentleness. "We want to raise the child and watch him grow up bit by bit. As parents, it's a little irresponsible of us to enter the chaotic martial world, like the Heavenly Palace at this time, where we can't even protect ourselves." Yu Lingxue smiled and said, "For the sake of our child, we must also give him a stable environment to grow up in. Let him grow up smoothly, start a family, and have children. Therefore, we've decided not to go to the Heavenly Palace. At least, we won't consider taking that last step in the short term. As for the second reason, the great battle is imminent. Success depends on man, but victory or defeat depends on the heavens. After this battle, if we lose, then everyone will die together. It doesn't matter whether we go to the Heavenly Palace or not. But if we win, then After the whole world has gone through this catastrophe, even if the main culprit is gone, it'll be a scene of devastation. Wuxia said affectionately. For this continent, we've once guarded it for more than 10,000 years. We really can't let go of such a devastated continent. After this battle, you have more important things to do. Obviously, it's impossible for you to stay and clean up this mess. Since that's the case, we, husband and wife, are duty-bound to take on this responsibility. And we've always thought that this should be our responsibility, Wuxia said resolutely. We want this continent to return to its former bright blue sky. Let this continent return to peace and tranquility, even more peaceful and joyful than before. Chu Yang left the Moonbreeze couple's room with heartfelt reverence. He only left behind a promise, a very solemn promise. That was Wuxia's request. It's impossible for our generation to go up there. But if our child is successful in the future, and has the opportunity to break through the limit, and go to the heavenly palace, I hope that Sword Master Chu will take care of him on account of our friendship. To this, Chu Yang's reply was, if such a day really comes, I'll definitely do it. I'll definitely not let my old friend suffer any grievances. Chu Yang considered for a long time, and finally decided to give Ling Muyang a super heavy pill. Chu Yang still found Ling Muyang very pleasing to the eye. Just the fact that he had a clear conscience in his 10,000 years in the martial world was worth a heavy pill. And it could be said that there were no so-called big clans now, so there was no such thing as an enemy of sword masters. Everyone was fighting for a common enemy. Chu Yang couldn't be stingy with this empty promise. Ling Muyang was so excited about the pill that tears almost flowed out of his eyes. With this medicinal pill, Ling Muyang would definitely be able to break through the bottleneck and take the final step to surpass the boundaries of the heavens. He would be able to enter the heavenly imperial court that martial artists yearned for even in their dreams. And he would even be able to search for traces of his father along the way. And this point was also the thing that Ling Muyang was most concerned about in his entire life. When he came out of Ling Muyang's room, he was stopped by Tan Tan. The two of them almost came to blows on the spot and broke off all relations. Tan Tan shamelessly demanded an exorbitant price. I want 10 pills. We're brothers, you can at least give me this, right? Chu Yang almost fainted from anger. No. Get lost immediately. 10 pills, you think they're cabbages? The minimum is 8. You can't give me any less. I'll get angry if you give me any less. 1 pill at most. You can get angry. I'm telling you, I have a bad temper. I'll fall out with you if you give me less than 7 pills. 1 pill at most. Fall out with me. I don't have much patience. You can kill me if I give you less than 1 pill. 1 pill. I'll pull out my sword if you want to die. Fuck. 3 pills should be enough, right? We grew up together naked. When we were young, we stood by the river and competed to see who could pee further. Such a deep friendship. Blood brothers. Only 1 pill. Get lost. Don't try to get close to me. You're ruthless. You're ruthless. Itchy, you're actually calling me old. You're awesome. I'm telling you, you bastard, 2 pills. 2 pills should be enough, right? I've already retreated a dozen steps. You should give me face. I'll ask you 10,000 times a day if you don't give me 2 pills. I won't be a human if I don't ask you once. You're not a human. Cut the crap. Is that okay? Give me a straight answer. Oh, are you threatening me? My most handsome and elegant senior brother. I admire you the most in this generation of mine. How would I dare to threaten you? Boo-hoo. I'm really going to cry. How about I massage your back and shoulders for you? Just 2 pills. Deal. Fuck, you've wasted so much of my saliva. Just 2 pills. Just you wait. When you get married, I'll tear off your roof on the night of your wedding night. Fuck. I swear I won't be a human if I don't take revenge for this. Tan Tan took the heavy pills and immediately turned hostile. He took the 2 heavy pills and left while cursing. His face was full of dissatisfaction. Chu Yang frowned as he calculated. He hadn't divided the 17 heavy pills yet. Now there was only 1 left. Chapter 1671. Chu Yang had a headache. Not only did he lose the share that he intended to leave for Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian and his parents, but he also had to guard against Tan Tan's sneak attacks. Based on Chu Yang's understanding of Tan Tan, this 3-star Saint King was definitely capable of such despicable means. Sigh, I can only think of a way in the future. With a heart full of helplessness, he met a few people. Huang Xiaoliu, a few experts from the Huang clan, a few experts from the Ling clan, and Ling Hanxue. Regardless of gender, they were all looking at him with an extremely resentful gaze. Ling Hanxue was still alright. After all, she was a woman. But as for the rest, they were all men. Making such resentful expressions was really too frustrating. But now, he really didn't have any. Forget about the others, but Huang Xiaoliu, you're also resentful. Giving you some dregs can make you explode. What's there to be resentful about? Chu Yang shuddered and walked away. Once again he returned to his room. At this time, among the few brothers inside, Gu Duxing, whose real strength was vaguely the strongest, had already finished absorbing the medicinal effect, and was guarding the brothers. How's the improvement? Chu Yang quietly walked in, and asked Gu Duxing via telepathy, for fear of disturbing everyone's cultivation. Very good. It's greatly exceeded my original expectations. Gu Duxing excitedly said via telepathy. I was originally a junior supreme martial artist, but after taking this medicine, I've now reached the peak of the junior supreme martial artist level. I even have a feeling that I can enter the higher supreme martial artist level at any time. The bottleneck of the higher supreme martial artist level no longer exists. That's good. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. The effects mentioned by the sword spirit were only theoretical. The actual effect was still unknown. Although he had taken it before, his improvement was not obvious. Although the effects of his own improvement were obvious, it wasn't that great. But now, the shocking effects of the super heavy pill had been greatly reflected in Gu Duxing's body. His chances of winning the decisive battle in the future had naturally increased by a few notches. Then he said, I'll take this opportunity to go into seclusion for a while. After everyone has finished absorbing the medicinal effect, please guard me. Before I wake up on my own, no one is to disturb me no matter what. Gu Duxing nodded in agreement. Chu Yang took a deep breath and entered the inner room of the room. Then he entered the tribulation space. Since the elixir was effective then, I'll try to open the seal and see if I can get something out of it. It would be best if it was something that could help him and his brothers in their cultivation. Otherwise, this battle would not be optimistic. Are you sure you want what's inside? The sword spirit sucked in a breath of cold air. I'm afraid that the thing inside is no small matter. If you want to forcefully open it, I'm afraid that even an emperor wouldn't be able to do so. Chu Yang's face darkened. We're in a critical period right now. He had to try his best to open it. Even if I can only open it once with all my might, it's enough. The current situation is very unfavorable. If we can't improve further, it will be very difficult for us to win this battle. I'm afraid that we will be in danger of being completely wiped out. If that's the case, then the Chongtian continent is finished. The Dharma Supreme will definitely not stop his plan to destroy the world. If the heavens cannot bear such consequences, neither can we. But, there's no but now. Chu Yang said resolutely. No matter what. He had to open that seal no matter the cost. After opening it, whether or not the thing inside can be used is one thing. But we can't give up on this hope before we try. Seize this last chance and try your best. Bring me there. Chu Yang ordered. The sword spirit was extremely helpless. With a frown, he brought Chu Yang to a corner of the tribulation space. This place looked no different from any other place. Hazy mist shrouded the edges. Obviously, this was where the barrier of the tribulation space was. Is this the place? Chu Yang reached out and touched it. However, his finger directly touched a piece of mysterious flexibility. It was the spatial wall. This is the place. The sword spirit nodded affirmatively. Chu Yang was a little dizzy. It seems that I can't even find where the seal is. How can I talk about breaking it? Breaking this seal doesn't require force. Instead, it requires mental strength. As long as you focus your mental strength, you can see the seal. The sword spirit said. But I'll say this first. This seal is very powerful. Moreover, because breaking the seal requires mental strength to attack the seal. If you fail, you will have to bear the consequences of mental strength backlash. In other words, if you fail, you will have to bear the full force of mental strength backlash. It's like you punching yourself, and it's a full-force punch. Chuyang grinned. He felt cold sweat dripping down his spine. This thing was easy to say. However, punching yourself with all your strength was definitely not a good feeling. Not only was it not a good feeling, but it was also very uncomfortable. And it was a mental strength backlash. He really didn't want to relive the previous painful experience. It would definitely be like a trip to the 18 levels of hell. Unfortunately, Chuyang didn't have much choice now. Even if it was a painful experience, he had to try it. So be it, because if it didn't work, he would have to start a real tour of hell. Standing in front of the seal, Chuyang took a deep breath and adjusted his spiritual power to its optimal state. Then, he began to circulate it with all his might. After a while, he suddenly focused his mental strength in his eyes and looked forward. Right in front of his eyes, an almost transparent barrier slowly appeared out of thin air. Behind this barrier, he could faintly see a lot of fruits piled up inside. They were arranged in a disorderly manner. The person who placed these things clearly didn't treat these fruits as anything good. He just casually threw them in. He didn't consider that the irregular arrangement would affect the fruits themselves. Seeing this situation, Chuyang felt a burst of heartache. At the same time, he was overjoyed. First, since the other party didn't value these fruits very much, the seal might not be very formal. This was undoubtedly a good sign for him. Maybe he could open it right away. Second, since these were fruits, then these fruits themselves must be heavenly treasures. Since they were heavenly treasures, then they must have the effect of increasing cultivation. He believed that this wouldn't be a waste of effort. Things that the other party didn't value were very rare now. Looking as far as the eye could see, each of those fruits was surrounded by a hazy halo. Just based on this point alone, all the heavenly treasures in the Chongtian continent did not have such a peculiar phenomenon. This was enough to explain the degree of extraordinariness of these fruits. The problem now is how to take them out. He hoped that the other party really didn't value them. That way, they wouldn't set up a strong seal. At this point, he could only work hard to move forward. Chuyang made up his mind. He separated a tentacle of his mental strength and extended it toward the seal. Just as he got close to this almost transparent seal, he felt a sense of powerlessness that couldn't be shaken at all. But fortunately, he didn't suffer any backlash. Chuyang gradually increased the intensity of his mental strength, but the feeling was the same from beginning to end. There was no effect at all. The intensity of his mental strength gradually climbed to the limit of Chuyang's body, but he still couldn't break the seal. Chuyang tried every way, but there was no progress. In desperation, he gathered all his mental strength at one point and rushed forward. He wanted to use the heaven and earth strike, hoping for a fluke puff. Bang! Minister Chu was immediately hit by an extremely strong rebounding force. Then, he flew out like he was riding on a cloud. Chuyang was hit by the recoil of the seal. He lay on the ground and didn't get up for a long time. For a moment, he was in so much pain that he couldn't even make a sound. He could only roll back and forth on the ground. It was the kind of rolling that used up all his strength, and his whole body was completely tense. After a long time, he finally managed to catch his breath. He held his head and moaned, "Oda, Oda, fuck him." The recoil this time was really not light. The recoil of Chuyang's mental strength, if converted to martial strength, was almost equivalent to the full force punch of the number one expert of the heavenly layer, Ning Tianya. After all, Chuyang's mental strength was almost the number one in the heavenly layer. Even the current Dharma Supreme couldn't be compared to him. So how could this recoil be easy to bear? When Chuyang struggled to stand up, he still felt extremely weak all over. He was actually sweating from the pain, and was close to dehydration. The recoil of mental strength didn't only affect the brain and divine sense. It also had a considerable impact on the physical body. After gulping down a few mouthfuls of the spring of life, he felt slightly better. Looking at the seal that still seemed to have nothing, Chuyang felt a lingering fear. In the past, he didn't know what it meant to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot, or a mayfly trying to shake a mountain. Today, he completely understood. There was no wavering at all. What should he do? There was obviously a treasure mountain in front of him, but he didn't have the means to open it. Why don't you give up? The sword spirit advised. This isn't a seal that you can open now. If you force yourself to try, it will only cause damage to yourself. The battle is imminent. If you are not in your best condition, it will be more disadvantageous for the future battle. And the greater the impact, the stronger the recoil. If something goes wrong, I'm afraid. Chu Yang shook his head. I understand. If something goes wrong, it may cause me to have a mental breakdown or even become a zombie. But if I give up now, it's equivalent to giving up this battle and the lives of my brothers. How can I give up? Using my life to exchange for the lives of my brothers, this gamble is worth it. I'll give it my all. Chu Yang took a deep breath and stood in front of the seal once again. His mental strength was activated again and attacked the seal. Then there was another scream. Chu Yang was thrown out again. This time, it was even worse. Chapter 1672. Chu Yang only felt that his brain had turned into pieces of tofu dregs. Stars were flying in front of his eyes, as if countless universes had appeared. After a long time, he stood up and tried again. Chu Yang's previous guess was right. Every time he suffered a backlash, it was comparable to the 18 levels of hell. Such a painful feeling. If it were someone else, they would rather die than experience it a second time. But Chu Yang would definitely not give up, even if it was 10 times, 100 times, because he knew that this was where the hope of this battle lay. It was also where the greatest hope for the survival of his brothers lay. If he couldn't open this place, there was absolutely no chance of winning this battle. Just when Chu Yang used his spiritual energy to attack the seal for the first time, in a place that was unknown how far away, a white-clothed youth was standing on top of a majestic mountain with 8 extremely beautiful women. In front of them was an ancient but extremely majestic strange city wall, winding between the mountains. Looking around, the landscape was picturesque. This is my hometown. Every time I see the Dragon City, my heart is always surging. I can't control myself. The young man in white looked at the vast land under his feet with clear and affectionate eyes. A graceful woman in white came in front of him. On her dazzlingly beautiful face, there was a trace of a smile. This place is indeed very good. And whether it's the local customs or the beautiful scenery, it's much better than most of the places we've seen. Another beautiful woman said excitedly. Why don't we stay here for a while? Let's take a break for a while. Let's change our mood. It can also satisfy our husband's homesickness. Good idea. The women clapped together, expressing their agreement. The young man in white tilted his head and thought for a while. He said, This is also good. But I'll first go and see what people wear now. It's better to play around here. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. We can't be too shocking, right? Okay. However, the nearest city below seems to be very lively. I can hear the sound of firecrackers. The woman in white who had spoken earlier tilted her head to listen and said, It seems to be a big day. Many people are setting off firecrackers. It's actually some university? What kind of people are admitted to some university? It seems to be very fun. And this university, what is it? Do you remember the academies in our hometown? The white-clothed youth said excitedly. The universities here are probably the local names of those academies. However, there are no martial skills taught here. But you can learn a lot of other things, even though you might not be able to use them. Is that so? Does it sound interesting? The girls were all excited. Why don't we go to school and roleplay? The young man in white smiled evilly. Good idea, good idea. The girls cheered and expressed their approval. Go. Let's go down and get a feel of the situation first, then we'll go to school. The white-clothed youth laughed and stood up. Let's do it. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt a spiritual fluctuation, and he couldn't help but frown. He immediately understood what had happened. He frowned and muttered, What is that little guy doing? You're not afraid to die again and again. Do you want to play yourself to death? That little guy? The girls asked with interest. The one in the double sky continent. It's really annoying. I'm in high spirits and want to do something. I haven't been in such a good mood for many years. The white-clothed youth twitched his mouth. This little guy is the kind of person who won't turn back, even if he hits the south wall. He must break the south wall. Well, since he's playing with his life so hard, I won't waste any more time on him. Let him go in once. As he spoke, he snapped his fingers and muttered, "You can only eat the yellow one. You can only take one. If you're too greedy and die, don't blame me." Then he stood up and laughed. "Wives, let's go to school. At the same time, I'll let you see my favorite colorful world." With a burst of cheers, the girls followed him all the way. It was as if beautiful clouds were floating in the sky. In the tribulation space, Chu Yang was still persistently attacking the seal. It seemed as if he wouldn't stop until he broke through the seal. Suddenly, the power of the seal disappeared. Chu Yang was caught off guard. He stumbled and rushed in like a bull. He almost rushed to the top of those fruits. For a moment his eyes were wide open. Outside, the sword spirit also opened his eyes wide. What's going on? How is it possible? He really broke it. Wow. Sword Master can't be so fierce, right? He can even break the seal set by that powerful person. This is really amazing. At the same time, a voice sounded in Chu Yang's mind. "Little guy, do you want to die? Even if you want to die, you don't have to do it in such a painful way, right?" Before Chu Yang could speak, the voice said, "Well, I have something important to do now, so I won't waste time with you. This time, I'll make an exception and let you in. But remember, if you want to go in the future, you have to wait until you're strong enough. If you're not strong enough, you can't go in even if you kill yourself. This is the only time I'll give you preferential treatment. There won't be a next time. You're only allowed to take the yellow ones. You're only allowed to take one. You're not allowed to take more. If you're too greedy, don't blame me." Then the voice disappeared again. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that it wasn't his sincerity that could move metal and stone. It was the other party who made an exception for him. That's right. Based on my previous experience, my successful breakthrough this time was a little too unusual. I had to face reality and admit the gap between us. However, it's rare for me to come in. Why am I only allowed to take one? Isn't this too much of a pity? Looking around, he saw that there were two kinds of fruits. One was yellow and was piled up outside. There were a lot of them. It was the kind that allowed one to take one. The other was black, but there were only two of them. They were arranged in a row inside. As for the innermost part, there was a sword floating in the air. Chu Yang stretched out his hand and grabbed a yellow fruit. He wanted to try to grab a second one and see what these things were. But an extremely pure and terrifyingly huge energy suddenly emerged from the fruit in his hand. Chu Yang was sent flying by this energy and tumbled a dozen times in a row. He squatted down on the ground, and with a bang, a purple crystal was smashed into pieces by him. Minister Chu's expression was strange. He wanted to cry but had no tears. My butt. But his butt had really cracked and was dripping with blood. As for the seal in front of him, it had disappeared again. Chu Yang knew that this time, it wouldn't be opened a second time. At least, before he was strong enough, he wouldn't be able to open it. Even if he really killed himself, it would be useless. But looking at his hand, he was a little depressed. Is this fruit enough? But how can that fruit be so powerful? What kind of fruit is this? While Chu Yang was in doubt, the sword spirit had already rushed over. His eyes were wide open. "You took it out. You actually managed to break the seal. That person took the initiative to let me in." Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "What do you mean I broke the seal? I'm still far from it." It was rare for him to say something like this. He wasn't bragging. The sword spirit was at a loss. "This time, I said that I was risking my life. I wasn't risking my life to break the seal. I was risking my life to try and break the seal. I was betting that he would eventually let me in. Do you understand?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, "He's so busy and lazy. He certainly won't be able to endure my repeated attacks. This place will open as long as he's annoyed. Otherwise, why would I risk my life? Don't I know that I don't have the ability to open the seal?" Then he sighed and said, "But after this time, it will be impossible for me to use such a trick to go in again. Let's not talk about whether he'll agree or not. I'll look down on myself if I use such a trick again." The sword spirit was stunned. So this guy acted as if he was risking his life to use a trick. Suddenly, the sword spirit had a new understanding of the sword master's craftiness. Let's talk about something serious. What did you take out? The sword spirit tactfully changed the topic. Wait a minute. Chu Yang said angrily. Let me take a breather first. Do you think that I was faking it when I tried to break the seal so many times? Although what I did was just a cheap trick, I was truly risking my life. Ouch. It really hurts. Why can't the heavy pill heal the wound on my butt? The sword spirit curled his lips. That almighty person looks like a bad-tempered person. He's only making your butt bleed. He's already very merciful that he didn't permanently cripple your butt. Moreover, he wants to punish you. What kind of punishment would it be if the heavy pill was effective? After a long time, Chu Yang struggled to stand up. He twisted his body and looked at his bloody back. He wanted to cry but had no tears. How can I wear clothes like this? But how can I not wear clothes? Sigh. I don't want to talk about it. It's all tears. He finally had the time to look at the fruit in his hand. He saw a strange-shaped fruit in his hand. The reason why it was said to be strangely shaped was because if this fruit was placed from a distance, no matter which side it was viewed from, it would still be round. Even when he held it in front of his eyes would tell him, this fruit is round. Isn't it normal for a fruit to be round? But the feeling of holding it in his hand told him that this fruit wasn't round. Instead, it was completely square in shape. It looked like a square cube. The edges of its overall appearance were as neat as a knife. Chu Yang couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Chapter 1673. I really didn't expect that there are so many strange things in the boundless universe. The fruit that comes from a tree can actually be so square. If you say it's square, then so be it. What was even more amazing was that it could even give people a perfect visual deception. He was really a little speechless. On the surface of the fruit, there was an unusually hazy fog. It was very clear, like a white halo that surrounded the fruit. Holding it in his hand, his fingers couldn't actually touch the surface of the fruit at all. It could only be said that he was holding a ball of fog, and the fog was holding the fruit inside. Such a magical fruit. Not to mention Chu Yang. Even the sword spirit had never seen such a miracle in his life. It's really magical. There's actually such a spiritual object in the world. The sword spirit was almost stunned. Suddenly he exclaimed, there are actually naturally formed words on this fruit. Words? Chu Yang was stunned and looked at it intently. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide. There were actually words. Not only were there words, but the words could actually move. 5 words, a symbol on the surface of the fruit, moving slowly and continuously, as if following some specific pattern. Heaven, earth, black, yellow fruit. Chu Yang read out these words one by one. He couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. There are really 5 words. I'm afraid these are the names of this strange fruit. Heaven, earth, mystery, yellow fruit. What kind of fruit was this? Even the name grew on the fruit? And what kind of symbol was this? What did it mean? He didn't seem to have seen it before. It was like 2 fish sleeping with their necks stretched out, forming a strange circle, one black and one white. There was a white eye on the black fish's head, and a black eye on the white fish's head. What kind of symbol was this? As the strange fragrance continued to spread, the sword spirit suddenly cried out in alarm. This was because his body was actually within this strange fragrance. It was recovering continuously. The injuries from the battle with the Dharma Supreme were actually recovering without any medicine. And the reason for this amazing result was just the fragrance of this fruit. Just the fragrance alone could have such a great effect. What was going on? Chu Yang and the sword spirit were flabbergasted. Then, they turned their heads at the same time and looked at the fruit in Chu Yang's hand. Just the fragrance alone is enough to completely heal my injuries. You, sword spirit said in a trembling voice. You can't be thinking of eating me in one bite, right? Chu Yang also took in a breath of cold air. He was sweating profusely. If he had swallowed the fruit in one gulp when he took it out, then he was sure that he would have exploded all over the tribulation space. Even the entire tribulation space had exploded. It wasn't surprising for Duo Zik to explode. This fruit contains a huge amount of energy. Even if 10 of you ate it, you would still be able to eat it. Even if 10 people work together, I'm afraid they won't be able to bear it. The sword spirit simply sensed the enormous medicinal power of the heaven-earth arcana yellow fruit, and his face turned pale with a swish. This kind of fruit contained a huge amount of pure medicinal power. To a martial artist whose cultivation wasn't high enough, it was simply an irresistible poison. The only result of consuming it was a body explosion. Chu Yang was completely at a loss. The seal was finally opened after all the tricks, and the fruit with a huge amount of energy was taken out. But how was he going to eat it? This time, he didn't return empty-handed from a treasure mountain. He had a supreme elixir in his hand, but he didn't dare to eat it. He was even more at a loss. The energy contained in this fruit. The sword spirit smiled bitterly. He seemed a little hesitant and unsure. Sword Master, the power of this fruit. In my most conservative estimation, it can make the most ordinary person start from nothing. Without any foundation, he can directly rush to the peak of the earth level. This is also the most conservative estimate. Chu Yang was stunned. This time he was really stunned. Since Chu Yang was reborn, he had many adventures. The heavenly treasures that he had obtained could be found in the entire heavenly layer. It was definitely worthy of the word the most. There was no one else. It was the only one. However, this fruit had already beaten all of Chu Yang's fortuitous encounters to the bottom of the valley. In fact, it seemed that all of his fortuitous encounters and heavenly treasures added together weren't as miraculous as this one fruit. This was a bit too exaggerated. Sword Master's understanding of the so-called earth level is probably still a little hazy. Let me give you a simple example. The so-called earth level strength is a level higher than the current Dharma Supreme. The sword spirit grinned. At best, it's only a level lower than the peak level of the heavenly demon when he wasn't injured. I don't know when Sword Master will be able to understand it more clearly if I put it this way. Of course, the prerequisite for reaching the earth level I'm talking about is, you have to be able to bear it. If one can't bear it, the result is very simple. With a bang, even the fruit and the person are gone. It was rare for the sword spirit to be so humorous. He said, "Of course, it can't be said that there's nothing there. If those scattered pieces of flesh and blood were buried in the soil, it would instantly make the trees within a radius of 100 miles grow to their limits. Then they would wither and turn into rotten wood, turning into fine powder. After that, in the following thousands of years, the treasures of heaven and earth would continue to grow and even mutate. It's definitely not a Leduo that the martial world yearns for. It's a rather simple matter." Hee. Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit with a fake smile. He gritted his teeth and said, "You're so damn humorous today. You're either dropping the ball or joking with me. You're really good. You're really good. You're really amazing." The sword spirit chuckled mischievously. It seemed as if he was gloating over Chu Yang's misfortune. Gloating over other people's misfortune. This sentence seemed to be somewhat contradictory. But this was the sword spirit's state of mind at the moment. This was the first time he saw Chu Yang completely helpless in the face of good things. It was completely different from his previous confident and smug self. Naturally, he was gloating a little. Of course, he was also worried about how to deal with this fruit. How could he not gloat and be depressed at the same time? One could only look but not eat. If it were anyone else, they would be so depressed that they wanted to die. Something's not right. Chu Yang frowned and said, "The fragrance of this fruit seems to be spreading very quickly." The two of them turned their heads at the same time. Then, they exclaimed at the same time. They saw that in the spiritual herbal garden in the tribulation space, the spiritual herbal garden had actually grown crazily in such a short time. The two of them looked at it in a daze. It took them a while to come back to their senses. This is just the effect of the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit's fragrance? Wasn't this too perverted? Isn't this a little too exaggerated? Previously, the sword spirit said that it would be upgraded to the earth level, was just a conservative estimate. Now it seemed that it was indeed a conservative estimate. Too conservative. Chu Yang could clearly see that the jade snow spirit ginseng had already taken shape. But under the nourishment and infection of that fragrance, it unexpectedly started to sprout new branches. And the jade snow spirit ginseng's body was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chu Yang was stunned. He was tongue-tied. This speed is too abnormal. It takes at least 500 years for the jade snow spirit ginseng to grow one round. He turned his head in a daze and exclaimed again. He saw that the hazy fog around the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit had reduced by one circle. There were only 5 circles now. It turned out that the tribulation space couldn't prevent the medicinal power of the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit from dissipating. The sword spirit shouted, "Quick!" Chu Yang quivered and instantly understood the sword spirit's meaning. With a whoosh, he got out of the tribulation space and went outside. Chu Yang understood the sword spirit's meaning very well. Although the energy in the fruit couldn't be absorbed now, at this speed, it was very likely that it could be absorbed in a while. And by the time he felt that it could be absorbed, the effect would have been greatly reduced. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. This really couldn't be delayed at all. Once there was that tendency, he had to take it without hesitation. Perhaps there was still the danger of it exploding when he discovered it, but once it entered his mouth, it could basically be digested. Gu Duxing and the rest were waiting outside, guarding him as if they were facing a great enemy. Chu Yang had just gone out when he shouted, "Tan Tan! Elder Wu! Lure! Come over quickly!" At this moment, he didn't even need to send a telepathic message. So what if he was a little shocked? Time was of the essence now. There was no time to waste. Upon hearing Chu Yang's extremely anxious voice, Tan Tan, Wu Jueqing and Chu Lu reacted almost subconsciously, flying over as if they were conditioned reflexes. They entered the room with a bang. "Close the door." Seeing that all 13 of them were present, Chu Yang said hurriedly, "There's no time to explain anything now. Remember everyone, don't act rashly. Be prepared and wait with your mouths open. Don't doubt, don't ask, just wait." Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Don't move? Wait with their mouths open? What did this mean? GMO really wanted to ask what was going on, but unexpectedly, Chu Yang suddenly disappeared in a flash. Mo Tianji made a prompt decision and shouted, "Everyone, if you have any questions, ask them later. Now open your mouths and wait." Mo Tianji knew that since Chu Yang said so, he must have his reasons. Moreover, the urgency in Chu Yang's voice, and the way he came and went in a hurry already showed that this was definitely an extremely important matter. Therefore, he made a decision without hesitation. Everyone's eyes bulged at the same time as they looked at Mo Tianji. "Boss is going crazy. And you, the think tank, are going crazy too?" But Mo Tianji was already the first to open his mouth, his stern gaze sweeping over everyone. Although it was still uncomfortable, he was far from being as pathetic as the others. He even put a hand on Chu Luer's shoulder, trying his best to use his remaining strength to help his disciple absorb the medicinal effects. Chu Luer's talent was undoubtedly amazing, and her physique was also far superior to that of ordinary cultivators. But if she were to consume that little bit of fruits by herself, it would really be beyond her ability. Mo Tianji, who originally had a solemn expression, seemed to have sensed something. The stern expression on his face relaxed a little, and the thick white fog emitted from everyone's bodies gradually filled the entire room, actually showing signs of solidifying. Before this, more than 10 mid-grade supreme martial artists had joined forces to set up an extremely powerful supreme martial artist divine sense seal, which had already firmly controlled all the movements in this room. From the outside, there was only peace and tranquility. But inside the room, everyone's body was in a perilous situation. If they were not careful, they would be in danger of exploding. And once they exploded, not only would they die, it would also cause a chain reaction. No one in this room would be lucky enough to survive. They would definitely die. This time, the sword spirit also quietly revealed himself. With a solemn expression, he stood guard for everyone. He really didn't expect that just one heaven-earth arcana yellow fruit, and one that had already dissipated more than half of its spiritual energy, would actually have such a domineering effect when consumed by 14 people. It actually almost caused these 14 people to explode together. What kind of immense medicinal effects was this? His previous estimation was really too conservative. The sword spirit suddenly felt that the future was bright. Not to mention other things. Just thinking about how there were so many heaven-earth arcana yellow fruits in Chu Yang's tribulation space, and how there seemed to be some unknown fruit of a higher level. And those thousands of miraculous elixirs in the elixir gardens that were improving with each passing day. Thinking about the heavy elixir and the 8 great elixirs, that Chu Yang had never really revealed their true power ever since he obtained them. Thinking about the purple cloud heavenly emperor's legacy, and those countless souls of the purple crystals, and holy crystals. How far could this Lord Sword Master reach in the end? Anticipation. Maybe they couldn't purge the Tribulation Sword Master, but to purge the other people, with the current strength of the Dharma Supreme and the law enforcement officers, it was no pressure at all. What are Yi Chunshan and the others doing now? Ling Muyang asked. They are also preparing for war. Diwu Qingru was still very respectful to this old ancestor of the Ling clan, so he answered very respectfully. Preparing for war? There was a faint pain in the depths of Ling Muyang's eyes, but he snorted and said, "A bunch of ungrateful people, short-sighted people. What's the use of preparing for war? Hoping for a fluke?" After scolding, he didn't wait for Diwu Qingru to speak and sighed first. Sigh. This war. In the end there is no right or wrong. After all, we are brothers for more than 10,000 years. Diwu Qingru knew that he was in a complicated mood at the moment. He just smiled and drank with him, but didn't bring the topic to the ancestors of the Zhu clan. Ling Muyang sighed deeply. Time passed quietly. The capital was already in a state of panic, and every bush and tree was an enemy. Although the main force of the law enforcement officers hadn't arrived yet, the people in the city could already clearly feel that there seemed to be countless strong pressure coming from all directions, sweeping towards the capital. For a moment, everyone felt a kind of pressure that made it hard for them to breathe. Under the call of the big clans, the majority of the Jianghu experts who had resolutely joined the war this time were in the majority. Only a few people still wanted to wait and see what would happen next. But these people were instantly turned into hundreds of thousands of corpses under Yi Chunshan's command. The corpse-dissolving powder was scattered over, and wisps of green smoke rose in spirals. A motley crew. All of them are a motley crew. Diwu Qingru sighed repeatedly. With such a disorderly attack, what was the use even if they had more people than the enemy by several times? At the borders of the battle, corpses were strewn everywhere. Thousands of people died an unnatural death. There were even people who had not made a single move, and could not even see what the enemy looked like. On the other hand, although the law enforcement team could not be said to be well-disciplined and well-trained, at least they had a certain level of discipline. How could this be called a battle? They were simply courting death. If Diwu Qingru was in command of the law enforcement team, he was absolutely confident that he could perfectly annihilate this motley crew with 3 times the number of troops. In fact, there might not even be too many casualties. The battle results would definitely be glorious. Lord Dharma Supreme, the enemy has no less than 400,000 troops, while we only have 100,000 troops. There is a huge disparity between the two sides. Shouldn't we send reinforcements? That 8th grade supreme martial artist was sweating a little. If the battle really went on like this, the Dharma Supreme would not allow anyone to command the battle on the spot. They could only fight based on the intuition of the people on the battlefield. Furthermore, their numbers were far less than the enemy's. Although the enemy's casualties were much more than their own, it was still a huge loss. What you said makes sense too. Then send another 240,000 troops. Let them have a fair battle and see who the final victory belongs to, the Dharma Supreme said without raising his head. Who will be in charge of commanding this battle? That 8th grade supreme martial artist asked awkwardly. Command? Why do we need to command? The Dharma Supreme's face darkened. He said coldly, the enemy is already commanding on the spot. Are we, the law enforcement officers, supposed to be commanding on the spot? That 8th grade supreme martial artist was stunned. Any commander with a bit of intelligence wouldn't make such a mistake. Why would the Dharma Supreme do this? Diwu Qingru was extremely troubled. Yi Chenshin had already asked a few times. Clan Master Diwu, how should we adjust the current situation? Diwu Qingru couldn't answer this simple question at all. The place in front of them was very big, but also very bad. It was bad for both sides. It was even worse for the enforcers, because the enforcers were completely unprotected and were drenched in the heavy rain. Their side was still in the city. At least they had a place to block the rain. Although this place was big, it could only accommodate a few 100,000 people at most. If there were more people, it would probably be even more chaotic. And it couldn't be used. The Dharma Supreme chose this place as the battlefield and made it clear that it was a fair battle. This was to prevent people like Diwu Qingru and Emo Tianji from interfering. Once you interfere, I'll take command. Anyway, the enforcers had the advantage. Once someone gave precise command, the ones who would die the fastest would be the people in the capital. In that aspect, the enforcers could be more effectively protected, because their martial strength was high to begin with. Diwu Qingru shook his head dejectedly. Faced with such a situation, he was really helpless. There's really no good way. The Dharma Supreme is waiting for us to give command. Once we participate, the enforcers have a strict hierarchy to begin with. If everyone participates in the command, we'll be at a greater disadvantage. It's better to have such a chaotic battle, where we can reap more benefits and kill more of the enemy's forces. Yi Chenshin sighed sadly. He wasn't a fool. How could he not see such a situation? He only asked Diwu Qingru for confirmation. If Diwu Qingru really had a way, he wouldn't believe it. The number of people on both sides of the battlefield was decreasing rapidly. The capital was surrounded by mountains on all sides, especially at the north gate. It was as if everyone was fighting in a huge basin. A total of 700,000 to 800,000 people were fighting. The area occupied was so huge that it stretched for hundreds of miles. Quite a number of people were at the outermost periphery, close to the foot of the mountain. Often as they fought, both sides would scream and flee. Run outside. The situation now was really too terrifying. If there was a chance, run. As long as they could get out of the capital's area, they would be able to escape. As long as they could get over this mountain that was close at hand, they would already be out of the capital's area. Since that was the case, what were they waiting for? Therefore, the people at the outermost periphery started to disperse in batches. Regardless of whether they were law enforcement officers or martial artists, they all shared the same thoughts and principles.